Thanks very much. I am joined by the former Minnesota Governor, Tim Pawlenty. Governor Pawlenty, thank you very much for the time.
Great to be with you.
Let me ask you, first of all, why should Americans trust a former two-term governor of Minnesota with the keys to the world's largest economy?
Well, if you look at what the challenges are that are facing the country and what needs to be done as it relates to cutting taxes, pro-growth policies, cutting spending, reforming government, including public employee pensions and health care and more, I accomplished all those things in a very difficult environment, the state of Minnesota. Difficult meaning I love my state, but it's one of the more liberal states in the country, and I governed there as a change conservative and got a lot done. And those are the same kinds of challenges that the country's facing, and a lot of politicians talk about these things. I've actually done them.
You, of course, unveiled your economic plan yesterday, at least some of the components of that plan here in Chicago, the president's hometown, and you set out some targets for things, particularly for economic growth, that raised a few eyebrows, certainly among those who follow the economy, certainly among probably your peers in the Republican Party, some of the other candidates out there. 5% economic growth. You said you're a truth teller. Is that truly achievable?
Well, it's not just Barack Obama's hometown. It was the place where Milton Friedman taught at the University of Chicago, and he said something very important, that great economist, that if we're going to grow the economy, we got to have limited government. We got to shrink government and put it in its proper place. So as to the 5% goal, I don't accept the point, Peter, that we're a declinist nation. I don't accept Barack Obama's view that, average is good enough. I don't accept the Congressional Budget Office projections that the best we can do over the next 10 years is 2% or so GDP. Let's get this country moving again. Now, it's an aspiration. It's a goal. And it's been done twice in the last 20 or so years. We had 5% or nearly so growth under Reagan. We had 5% or nearly so growth under Bill Clinton. And the idea that we can't do it again, hogwash. Of course we can do it again. This is the United States. We're not some laggard country that's going to look at our shoes and kick the dust and just accept average. Let's get going. Let's put a goal out there that's world leading, or at least on the upper end of that in terms of GDP growth. And then beyond that, we got the proposals to actually make it happen. And I travel this country every day, 6 days a week, talk to business leaders, new, middle-sized, big, and they all say the same thing. It's too expensive to do business here. It's too slow, too difficult, too discouraging. Please get the government off my back. This proposal unleashes our entrepreneurs in this country.
You also, in this proposal, dramatically cut taxes. You cut the corporate tax rate from 35% to 15%. You get rid of the 6 tax brackets right now for individuals, knock that down to 2. During the Clinton years, certainly, you had taxes go up. You had a higher tax rates on not just wealthier Americans, but all Americans, yet he got 3.5% average GDP growth during that time. How do you reconcile that? Where do you come up with the revenue, given the fact you're cutting taxes so dramatically?
Well, a couple of things. One is if you have the score dynamically, in other words, account for growth, at the end of 10 years, if you factor in the effects of our growth plus the tax cuts, but something also important, spending cuts. Ronald Reagan, with all of his great efforts, did not reduce spending. Bill Clinton did not reduce spending. In real terms, we're proposing as part of our proposal to cut taxes and cut spending. That's very different than what's happened in the past.
You would cap spending at 18% of GDP, at least that's what your proposal says. It's also exactly the same time you've got all these aging Americans, those baby boomers, heading to programs like Medicare, like Social Security. Are you basically saying, listen, we're going to have to cut spending on those programs to try and make up for this dramatically? Perhaps more so than the Ryan plan?
Yeah, those programs have to be reformed. And for example, the Ryan plan, and I give Paul Ryan great kudos. What a courageous piece of leadership that he's done for the country, really dragging the president into the discussion. We have a president of the United States who has no real plan, won't even address these issues, Peter. Paul decided not to address Social Security. We will, but we don't go to the American people and say, if you're on the program or near the program, we're going to cut you. That's not fair. We've told them the program is going to be there for them, and it should. But what we do need to do is say to the next generation, the ones coming into the workforce, we got to do some things. We're going to have to gradually raise the retirement age over time. We just have to. We're going to have to means test the cost of living adjustment, the annual cost of living adjustment. So if you're wealthy, you're not going to get that in the future. But if you're middle income or lower income, you will. These are reasonable things that we can get most Americans to agree to. And there are similar answers in Medicare and Medicaid. But it takes leadership. It takes somebody like the president to say calmly and constructively, yeah, we got problems, but here are the solutions. So if you just ask people generically, you want your Social Security cut? Of course people say no. But if you ask them about the two things I just mentioned, you can get a majority of the country to say yes. But we got to tell people the truth. And this is no longer about right versus left. This is sixth grade math. These programs are going underwater. We're not going to cut the programs. We're going to save the programs. But in that way, we got to reform them.
You didn't spell out specifically your ideas for Medicare. You said those will come later. But is it safe to say that the Pawlenty plan, when it comes to Medicare, will achieve at a minimum the same sort of spending reductions that Paul Ryan's plan does?
Well, our program will be different. We're going to have our plan out here in the next few months or sooner, and it'll have significant savings, but it's not finalized yet. But it'll include some things. It'll include more options. It'll also include what we call payment reform to differentially price various options, and people can choose which option they want to be in. But one thing we'll say for sure is if you're over a certain age, you can stay in Medicare as it currently exists. So again, we're not threatening anybody in the program or near the program, but we do have to change it for the future.
Now, you've criticized the president's economic policies. I noticed as well in your speech yesterday and elsewhere, you've taken aim at the Federal Reserve as well. I want your assessment of Ben Bernanke and what he's done. How much of America's economic situation today, the problems you cite, are a result of Fed policies?
Well, I think a good chunk of it. In fact, I didn't support Chairman Bernanke's appointment last time. For these very reasons. They called him Helicopter Ben, or he called himself Helicopter Ben for a reason. He has a very, what I would say, loose approach to the dollar and the strong dollar policy. We need to get back to a strong dollar as one of our economic goals. It reflects a strong country and a strong economy. And you now have a situation where the Fed has flooded the market with money. I think it's going to have significant intermediate and long-term effects. And the last chapter of this is not written, but I think the Fed has done some things that I think are going to make our problems more difficult going forward, including potentially triggering a significant round of inflation.
What's your message to Wall Street? You traveled to New York just a few days ago. You say you're a truth teller. What's your truth message to Wall Street?
The truth message to Wall Street is going to be get your snout out of the trough just like everybody else. And if I'm president, we're not going to have any more bailouts, carve-outs, handouts, or special deals. We'll reduce the corporate tax rate from 35% to 15%, but we're going to get rid of all the deductions, credits, or exemptions. And you're going to compete not based on your connections to a congressman, but connections to whether you can convince consumers that you got a good product or a good value-added proposition. If you can't do that, you shouldn't be in business. And don't look to government for crony capitalism. Don't look to government to bail you out. Either compete and succeed in a market or you don't.
How much money are you going to have to raise to be able to compete against not only Mitt Romney, but ultimately if you're the nominee of the president?
Well, the president says he's going to raise $1 billion, and I think he's backed that off a little bit and said maybe it's going to be $750 million, but it's a lot of money, and you have to compete at that level. President Obama is very good at going to Wall Street and other places and getting big chunks of money. But I think to compete for me in these early states, we're going to have to. Nobody's going to keep up early on with Mitt Romney because he's got the fundraising structure from last time and personal wealth. But we'll have enough to compete in those early states at least the Buick, if not the Cadillac level. We're not shooting for the Mercedes or the BMW level just yet.
All right, former Governor Tim Pawlenty will be following your campaign. Thanks for the time today here on Bloomberg. And Betty, we'll send it back to you in New York.
Peter, thanks.